Welcome to POTUS 2016, where we call the presidential horse race and pour cold hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. I'm Brian Lehrer. For the millions of Americans who are dismayed at the prospect of a President Trump, this week brought both grins and grimaces. At the same time Trump's poll numbers had been falling and his campaign funds dwindling, they witnessed a nationalist tsunami, which included voters who were angry at immigrants, felt excluded from the economic recovery, and happy to defy their entrenched leadership. Of course, these voters were in Great Britain, filing for divorce from the European Union, but the parallels were there, and they buoyed Trump. After crowing that the falling pound was good for his golf course in Scotland, Trump, having rebooted his effort with a new campaign manager, gave a prepared speech in which he called for an era of, he didn't call it nationalism, he called it Americanism.
This wave of globalization has wiped out totally our middle class. It doesn't have to be this way. We can turn it around, and we can turn it around fast.
Trump also portrayed Hillary Clinton as part of a leadership class that worships globalism. Democrats did get a boost from Senator Elizabeth Warren this week, however. She and Hillary Clinton looked a lot like running mates on the stump in Cincinnati. There, Warren proved she could go beyond matching Donald Trump tweet for tweet. She could make Hillary soar.
So here's what it boils down to. Hillary has brains, she has guts, she has thick skin and steady hands, but most of all, she has a good heart, and that's what America needs. And that's why I'm with her. Are you with her? Are you with her?
Yes, Elizabeth Warren on the ticket could rouse a crowd, soften Clinton's Wall Street image, even win over Bernie Sanders supporters. But would Warren be offered the job? Would she take it? Would an all-female ticket be a liability to grin or to grimace? So where exactly do the candidates stand against each other in the wake of Brexit? And how parallel are the issues? Let's take out the binoculars. Yes, time for the transnational horse race. Brexit supporters were indeed similar to Trump voters in that they were usually white, older, less affluent, and do not tend to live in urban areas. For a decade, they have suffered losses and income stagnation familiar to many Americans. Trump, the candidate, may have taken a brief hit since applauding Great Britain's independence, after the British pound dropped and global markets were cast into turmoil, but there are still 4 months left before November. And as the financial markets level off, expect the fear of a parallel catastrophe brought on by a vote for Trump, who wants to tear up trade agreements and confront China, to level off too. Brexit also teaches us something about polling methods. In their autopsy of the polling results that led up to the surprise Brexit result, the Huffington Post reports that online polling averages in Britain more accurately estimated the win for quitting the European Union, while live telephone polls had stick with the EU up by a couple of percentage points. For those not willing to say something out loud that is controversial, and a vote for Trump might be another example, online polling may play a useful role in forecasting the November vote. And despite the polls being so close, the betting markets, the financial markets, and Brits in general were nonetheless convinced that Brexit would lose. Groupthink. With that, let's look at the latest U.S. poll numbers. Quinnipiac University released a poll of registered voters that showed a tight race between Clinton and Trump. In that poll, Hillary led Donald by just 2 percentage points, though Clinton, the top line in blue, still leads polling averages by 7 percentage points. But if you only take polls of likely voters into account, her lead shrinks to a little under 4%. In America, however, the winner will not be determined by a national vote, like in the UK, but by the Electoral College. Writing for 538, Eitan Hersh says that it will be very hard to predict voter turnout because both presumptive nominees are so disliked. Hersh observes that electoral races for many offices have become more competitive over the years, and voters are showing an increasing willingness to split votes or even sit out elections. trends that could throw the whole electoral map into disarray. And look no further than Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania as examples of how a few key swing states can really be important. Since 1960, no presidential candidate has won without at least two of those three states, and parties do still matter too. Parties do. And both Republicans and Democrats continue to fall in line behind their nominees. But no one says they have to be happy about it. According to an NBC Wall Street Journal poll released this week, just over half, 52% of registered Republicans would have preferred someone other than Trump as their candidate. Among Democrats, the numbers were flipped, with 52% satisfied with Clinton as their nominee. But note, that still leaves 45% who would have preferred another candidate besides Clinton. So what does that mean for the GOP convention? When Republicans were asked by NBC and SurveyMonkey's weekly tracking poll if they wanted to dump Trump at the convention, just 3 out of 10 Republicans chose to open up the convention to another candidate. All right, let's drill down on a single issue.
Well, I'm glad the president's doing something about health care reform.
He's right. We need it.
But some of these details...
Like a national limit on health care?
Really?
The government caps how much the country can spend on health care and says that's it.
So, what if our health plan runs out of money?
There's got to be a better way.
That was from 1993, an insurance company-sponsored political ad that helped to kill Hillary and Bill Clinton's health reform plans. Now the Republicans again say they have a better way. Led by House Speaker Paul Ryan, they have published a blueprint for replacing Obamacare, the first such plan to have the official approval of the House leadership. It would discard the central elements of Obamacare, the mandate that citizens secure health insurance and the requirement that some employers provide it, and much more. Is it an outline for a more sustainable, market-based healthcare system? Or, as White House Press Secretary Katie Hill argued, nothing more than vague and recycled ideas to take health insurance away from millions? Paul Howard thinks there is merit to the GOP plan. He is senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute think tank and director of health policy there. He is a contributor to the Apothecary, that's the Forbes blog on healthcare policy and entitlement reform, and a regular columnist for the Morning Consult. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks.
So the mandate to buy health insurance and the subsidies to help people through that mandate based on their income would be gone. A tax credit to help people afford to buy voluntarily would replace it. How would that work, and why would that be better?
Right. So one of the problems with the Obamacare exchanges right now is that the insurance is very expensive, and you have a lot of Americans sitting out. So people who are getting very high subsidies with below 150% of the poverty level, nearly 80% of those people who are eligible are buying. After that, it plummets. So the question is, how do you make that insurance more affordable and accessible to everyone who's sitting it out? Even under the ACA, we're still going to have about 30 million Americans uninsured. The Ryan plan proposes a universal refundable tax credit, so low-income Americans would be able to get that benefit. And it would also deregulate the insurance markets, although states like New York could keep their arrangements, but other states could go back to a pre-Obamacare status quo, which we believe would drop the cost of insurance by about 50%.
The Washington Post published a very critical editorial about the Ryan plan, and one of the complaints was that the tax credit would be the same amount for everybody. So this would disadvantage poorer people who would then have to add a larger percentage of their own money to make up the cost of the insurance policy. The Obamacare, of course, subsidizes you on a sliding scale based on your income.
Right. I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern. I think you can get around that by risk adjusting the credit. What you're really worried about are people who are both low income and sick. That's not mentioned in the plan. I suspect that would have to come up in any kind of actual implementation, so you could expand it to those people who are in not so great health. There are also in the plan something called high-risk pools that would be funded by the federal government. There would be no waiting lists, and premiums on them would be capped, so some people could go into those plans. But I agree there's some details here that still need to be worked out.
And is a high-risk pool a kind of, dare I say it, socialized medicine, where everybody else is subsidizing the older and the sicker people who can't find their policies on the private market?
Well, I would say, look, there's not an infinite number of choices to try and deal with this problem. And some of them might be better or worse than the others. For instance, Obamacare says you can't charge an older person more than 3 times what you charge a younger person. That leaves some of those people to sit out the market. This is one way of saying there are going to be some very high risks in the market. We should pay for those people separately to lower costs in the main individual market. As long as you fund those programs, they should be sustainable, but then again, there are other ways to do that.
The Obamacare plan has the mandate for everybody to buy health insurance, which is largely designed to keep younger and healthier people in the market, putting money into the insurance companies that the insurance companies can then use for, the health care for older and sicker people. So what would keep the younger, healthier people from just leaving the healthcare market if it was voluntary, and then therefore making the rates go up for the older and sicker people?
Well, that's actually what's happening right now. So the enrollment of people ages 18 to 34 is capped out at about 26% on the Obamacare exchanges. Everyone else is sitting it out. It has to be much higher.
They'd rather pay the tax penalty.
They'd rather pay the tax penalty. There's recognition, the insurers will say this, the penalty is too low and there are too many loopholes. So the Ryan alternative is have an open enrollment period and say once you buy insurance, if you keep it, you cannot be risk rated again. You can never lose your insurance. That is a pretty stiff penalty. So instead of paying it one time, you could lose it for at least several years afterwards. That might be a big incentive for all those young people. If the insurance is again affordable, get back in the market, stay in the market.
And I understand the Ryan plan would eliminate the Obamacare promise that you'll never be denied because of a pre-existing condition. If you have a gap at any time in being covered, when you try to go back in, you can be denied coverage because of a pre-existing condition. Why would he want to go back to that?
No, actually, the way that the plan reads is you couldn't be denied, but you could be risk rated. So what would happen is the insurer would then turn around and say, here's a premium that's equivalent to your actuarial costs. So that would be more expensive. So someone would say, if I drop coverage now and get sick later, I'll pay higher premiums. And the plan says it would continue for some time. Was that indefinitely, permanently, or would that be for a few years? That's a part of the detail we work out, but that's one of those sticks that gets people to buy insurance.
And on being risk rated as an individual, am I correct that the Ryan plan would let insurance companies go back to charging an individual premiums based on their health status? Because one of the things that the Obamacare system does is to charge everybody who's the same age in the same geographical area pretty much the same thing.
Right. So what Obamacare has age bands that go up to 3 to 1, but you can't adjust for health status, which you referenced. So the Ryan plan would keep that you cannot adjust for risk status provided you've got insurance already, but you can you can adjust for age. So age could go up to 5 to 1. So it would be older folks would pay more, but they would also get bigger tax credits, and younger people would pay less. So you'd allow a bigger span between what a young person and an old person would pay, but you'd still be subsidizing people at the upper end of the age spectrum.
But that's, just so I'm clear, I understand that's younger people could get in cheaper than older people at that ratio of 5 to 1 maximum under Obamacare. It's 3 to 1. Maybe that's not that different. But what about the individual who is sick?
Right. So this is what would happen. There would be a one-time open enrollment, let's just say. And as long as you buy insurance there, you could not be risk rated. So if you're 35 years old, you get the same premium every 35-year-old would get. So that is the if you get in then. If you don't get in then, well then later on, if you didn't get insurance, you can be risk rated and you're going to pay a higher premium, and then we start talking about risk pools.
So that's part of the incentive to get in, because down the line, you're going to be covered at the same rate as everybody else your age.
Once you get in, you'll be rated at the same for everybody who has that age.
Now, this Ryan plan would also break open Medicare as we know it and Medicaid, right?
It would, although I think one of the interesting flips here that's worth talking about is that exchanges on the Republican part are opposed, public exchanges, but on the other hand, the Ryan plan is very open to the idea of Medicare exchanges. So what's wrong with having Medicare have an exchange-like project where people shop for competitive plans? They could keep Medicare fee-for-service, although that would be reformed, and they'd have a premium credit that they could take back and forth between FFS, fee-for-service, and Medicare Advantage plans, and they could switch once every year depending on what was best for them. So I think that looks a lot like the coverage you see for the ACA. It would just expand it across everybody.
Why isn't anybody consistent on that? The liberals don't like exchanges for Medicare. The Republicans don't like exchanges for Obamacare for everybody under 65.
Well, Medicare is the third rail. You always want to be seen as the defender of something. So Republicans have traditionally been the ones calling for Medicare reform. Democrats have traditionally defended it. Democrats have been ones championing extension below 65. Republicans have had their questions about it, especially about costs. But when you look at it, I think that there's actually room for a very important conversation there, which is, are we really just talking past each other?
I think Democrats are concerned that when you're talking about older people who by definition are going to be sicker, to throw them into the marketplace and hope that the private insurers are going to offer them reasonable policies that are really going to meet their needs, that makes people nervous.
The traditional Democratic concern about Medicare Advantage is actually we're throwing too much money into it, so that the satisfaction of seniors in Medicare Advantage plans is very high. The Democratic criticism is we're actually overpaying them. Studies do seem to suggest that MA plans do better. They offer, say, lower risk-adjusted mortality than FFS because they manage the networks. It's managed care. But at the same time, it has similar protections to Obamacare. You're not going to wind up paying more because you're sick.
We have about a minute and a half left. Let's talk a little bit of politics. Does the Ryan plan have the Republican Senate's backing? Does the Ryan plan have Donald Trump's backing?
Look, I think the Senate would come down someplace very close. This is a consensus plan. It's very pragmatic. It doesn't throw everything out and ask us to start again. We talked earlier, details have to be worked out. I think the Senate could completely get behind this. If you want me to tell you what Trump thinks, I need a crystal ball. So I'm unsure, but I think there are elements here that Trump could pick up and run with that would be really more about populism, reform, and competition.
And for that matter, how about Hillary Clinton? Could there be common ground between a Republican Congress and Hillary Clinton on, let's say, certain elements of reform?
I think that's potential. The Bro Commission that talked about Medicare premium support back in 1999, that was a Clinton initiative. Clinton has talked about having lower costs on the exchanges. There is a provision of Obamacare called 1332 waivers that lets states take more control over their exchanges. So that's something Republicans want, and it might be something that she could offer as an olive branch along with other reforms, for instance, say Medicaid, that might get to a midpoint.
20 seconds. What are you watching for next from Paul Ryan?
Well, look, I think this is actually a very ambitious plan. I think that his ability to sell this is saying the Republicans are serious about health care and maybe distance himself and distance the party from a Republican candidate that doesn't necessarily talk very much about this or have much nuance, could only be a plus for the party.
Thank you very much for joining us and talking healthcare with us. We'll have you back.
My pleasure.
Let's stay with the politics of healthcare, but ask this question. Is there evidence that it helps when a president declares a war on cancer? Time for evidence-based politics, where we pour cold, hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. One presidential promise we all wish could be kept is finding a cure for cancer. It might sound far-fetched for a president to even try to take this on. Cancer is, after all, the second leading cause of death in the U.S. after heart disease, killing almost 600,000 Americans each year. But such presidential promises go back to 1971, when Richard Nixon signed the National Cancer Act, launching a war on cancer.
And I hope that in the years ahead, that we may look back on this day and this action as being the most significant action taken during this administration.
And President Obama, in his final State of the Union address this year, called for a moonshot-like campaign to fight cancer, a billion-dollar effort led by Joe Biden, whose son Beau died of brain cancer last year. Recently, Biden announced a new open genomic database to speed progress in cancer research.
We have to use every weapon at our disposal if we're going to meet our goal to help patients even more than you're already helping them today. And to be honest with you, it requires somewhat of a change in mindset. It requires a lot more openness, open data, open collaboration, and above all, open minds.
So what have we learned that we can use going forward? through personal memoir, a new book traces the war on cancer and argues that while progress has been made and more can be done, bureaucracy can stifle research. Here to discuss it is Dr. Vincent DeVita Jr., Professor of Medicine, Epidemiology, and Public Health at Yale University. His career spans the history of the war on cancer. He was head of the National Cancer Institute from 1980 to 1988, physician-in-chief at Memorial Sloan Kettering after that. He was director of the Yale Cancer Center. His book is called The Death of Cancer. After 50 years on the front lines of medicine, a pioneering oncologist reveals why the war on cancer is winnable and how we can get there. Welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Is the framing right? War as a metaphor?
No, not really. It was passed during the Vietnam War, so it was a nice metaphor, but it led to body counts, which was really detrimental, I think, to the war.
I think there's a perception out there that the war on cancer has been a failure because people keep getting and dying of cancer, but we keep throwing tax dollars at it. How much of a success, how much of a failure has the war on cancer been?
You know, it depends on your definition of success, okay? My view is it's been a great success. There's been tremendous progress. Mortality rates have declined steadily since 1990. Incidence has declined for some tumors since 1990. But if your criteria for success is that nobody ever dies of cancer, then the war has been a failure. I don't think anybody in the field ever expected that to occur in a short time frame, nor do they expect the current moonshot to do that. So.
How much has government been the driver of the progress?
Well, the money comes from government, and you can't do research without money. And so we've spent about over $100 billion on cancer research. But if you look at what's happened with the mortality declines, that's a good investment. There's economists at the University of Chicago did a study looking at the economic benefits of all health research. And for heart disease, because mortality rate has come down quite a bit in heart disease, it's something like $30 trillion of money put into the economy. For cancer, for every 20% reduction in mortality, you have about a $10 trillion surge of resources into the economy, because there's been about a 25% reduction in cancer mortality since 1990.
But you do complain in the book about the bureaucracy in some ways stifling the best potential progress, right?
Well, I'm referring mostly to drug development in there, but with the FDA, I think we have a problem with the FDA in terms of considering cancer a different disease than heart disease or, say, high blood pressure. When you're developing a drug for high blood pressure, the patient's going to live a long time, and you have to be very, very careful about putting a drug in a patient that's going to have 20, 30 years of life in front of them. But cancer patients is a different issue. And we can't get the FDA to sort of consider handling cancer as a different
Meaning
disease.
Approving experimental drugs more easily?
Yes, yes. The people the drugs are tested on usually have a 6 to 12 month lifespan in front of them. And I think we spend too much time doing needless studies, and we deny access to these drugs to patients who really need them.
I thought that lesson was learned 30 years ago through the AIDS drug movement, where there was so much political pressure on the FDA, and I thought the rules changed at that time.
They did, but they were detrimental to the cancer patient. Before the AIDS epidemic, we had a system for distributing drugs that worked very, very well. And then when the FDA never liked it, and it wasn't put into the Code of Federal Regulations, so that when the AIDS epidemic came along, they put out the treatment IND, which worked for AIDS patients. It was a much simpler disease, if you can believe it, and there were very few drugs. We had many more cancer patients and many more drugs. So they dropped the program that we had developed and put cancer patients under the treatment IND, and it didn't work.
How do you think the Obama moonshot model, as he calls it, compares to anything that's come before?
It's much smaller. When it's $1 billion, we've spent $100 billion on the current war on cancer. But it's a very welcome infusion of money. The field has been kind of starved for money for the past 10 years. The budgets have been pretty flat. So I think it's good. And it really boils down to how you spend it. And they have a committee that they've put together to advise them. It's at the NIH, so that the committee is not going to make any recommendations for the organizational change, which I think you need to do along with it.
Where would you recommend the money be spent? Are there better and worse places to spend
I
it?
think what I've heard so far is very good. I think this business of a genomic database and sharing data is a very important part of it all. What I'm worried about is that I think what Vice President Biden did by appointing a czar close to him to organize the program is very good, because there are hundreds of millions of dollars in cancer research that are not in the NIH. They're in the Defense Department and the CDC and so on. So I think that's good. What worries me is that position is not codified. It's not in the description of the Cancer Act, and if there's a change in administration, you may lose that, and then you lose any chance to change the organization.
What is the genomic database? What does that mean?
Well, it means we now have the ability to sequence the genome of the cancer and compare it to the genome of the patient itself. The problem is sharing all this information. Now you have a tremendous amount of information, and the more you share it, the more you can find out the small subsets of patients that respond because they have a particular type of mutation. And I think that everybody's sequencing, if they can find the money to pay for it, they're sequencing the genome, but there's very little sharing of information amongst people that we should be doing.
I don't think this is broken out per se as an issue on the campaign trail, but if one were to get the opportunity to ask Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton the right question, what would the question be?
Do you support the moonshot or a continuing version of the moonshot, because 1 billion is not going to go very far. So I think, I think that, first of all, I think the candidates should be asked that. They should be put on the spot as to whether they support cancer research and would support the NIH to do this kind of research, because the NIH is, the support. When you sometimes find something when you're not looking for it, and so you can find very important findings in cancer research by studying heart disease, arthritis, and so on. So the NIH support is very important. The Congress has been, I think, very good to the NIH in general, especially in good times. There's bipartisan support for NIH.
So the question to Clinton and Trump would be simply, do you support the $1 billion moonshot, or will you fund it with even more? Is it that simple as a dollar figure?
Would you continue it in your administration? Do you think it's important enough to continue? I'm concerned that the way it's organized now could disappear overnight if there's a change in administration.
Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And that's POTUS 2016 for today. We're here each week at this time calling the presidential horse race and pouring cold, hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. I'm Brian Lehrer. Thanks for watching.